Amid the bustling streets of a quiet Colorado town, Alex Ramirez kept to himself. The former military mechanic ran a modest garage, known for taking in hopeless cases, both mechanical and human. One cloudy morning, a sleek black SUV pulled up beside his garage. Out stepped a well-dressed woman holding a young girl, barely 7, clinging to crutches. The woman's eyes scanned the rusted sign above the garage, uncertain but desperate. She took a deep breath and walked toward the man covered in grease, his head under the hood of a battered truck, unaware that both their lives were about to change forever. Her name was Evelyn Hartford, CEO of Hartford Biotech and one of the wealthiest women in the state. She was used to flying private, commanding boardrooms, and breaking barriers in medicine. But all of that meant nothing when it came to her daughter, Lila. The girl hadn't taken a step on her own since birth. Every doctor, therapist and engineer had failed. Evelyn had traveled across the country only to be pointed toward this small-town garage with rumors of a miracle. She had no expectations, just a mother's dwindling hope. Alex didn't look up when she introduced herself. His calloused hands kept tightening bolts until she mentioned her daughter. That made him pause. He turned slowly and met Lila's eyes. She didn't flinch, just stared quietly from behind her glasses. "I heard you helped a boy walk," Evelyn said. Alex wiped his hands and nodded. "Didn't help him walk, just gave him the right tools to believe he could." Then, without another word, he motioned toward a cluttered corner of the shop where a strange-looking leg brace sat half-covered in oil rags. The brace looked nothing like the ones from medical catalogs. It had motorcycle springs, rubber grips, and parts that might have come from an old bike's suspension. Alex explained how it worked, not against the body, but with it. "Doctors think in terms of control," he said, "but movement's about rhythm, not restriction." Lila tilted her head, listening. She surprised her mother by reaching out and touching the brace. Alex watched her silently. Then he picked up a wrench, handed it to her and said, "Let's build something together." The following day, Evelyn returned with Lila. This time she didn't just observe, she helped. Alex believed part of healing came from being involved. He let Lila tighten bolts, test springs, and ask questions. They weren't just building equipment, they were building confidence. Each session became more than therapy. It was play, exploration, and discovery. Lila's laugh began to echo through the garage. Evelyn hadn't heard that laugh in years. She started bringing lunch, chatting with the regulars, learning about brake pads and carburetors, just to stay close to the magic happening right in front of her. Word spread around town about the girl in the pink overalls, helping the mechanic. Locals stopped by just to watch. No one knew who her mother was, and Evelyn never told them. She didn't want the sympathy or attention. She wanted her daughter to be seen not as broken, not as pitied, but as strong. One afternoon, Lila took 3 steps between 2 workbenches without her crutches. A boy clapped. An old woman wiped a tear. Alex just nodded and handed her a screwdriver. "Try tightening that bolt," he said. "You've got this." With each passing day, the progress became undeniable. Evelyn caught herself hoping again. She documented Lila's steps in her phone, but never posted them. These were sacred moments, too real for social media. At night, she cried quietly in her hotel room, overwhelmed by gratitude and guilt. How could someone so simple succeed where the finest minds failed? She offered Alex money. He refused. "I'm not running a charity," he said. "I'm running a garage, and she's helping fix things." Evelyn understood then. This was never about invention. It was about connection. Alex's past slowly surfaced. He'd been a combat engineer in the Marines. After an IED left him partially deaf and emotionally distant, he'd wandered until this garage became home. Fixing things brought him peace, but teaching kids, especially ones society gave up and gave him purpose. Evelyn respected that. She stopped offering help and started listening. She learned how trauma rewires the brain, how hope needs space to grow, how a quiet man with no degrees, understood human resilience better than most doctors. She also noticed how Lila glowed around him. Not like a patient, but like a partner. One rainy afternoon, while thunder cracked outside, Leela stood unassisted beside a freshly painted bike. She reached for the handlebar and grinned. Alex looked up. From under the hood of a '73 Camaro, Evelyn watched from the doorway, frozen. Lila took a step, then another. She didn't fall. Evelyn dropped her coffee and ran forward. "She's doing it," she gasped. Alex didn't speak. He just handed Lila a wrench. "Think you can tighten that mirror?" he asked. Lila nodded, completely unaware of the tears welling in her mother's eyes. The breakthrough changed everything. Lila walked daily now, slowly but with growing confidence. She stopped using crutches. She even started helping Alex repair real bikes, not just pretending. She wore a custom-made brace. Alex adjusted weekly, always asking for her opinion. "Tell me if it feels stiff," he'd say. Lila offered real feedback. She wasn't a test subject, she was part of the solution. Evelyn started documenting the entire journey in a private journal. She titled it, "Where Hope Found." Greece. That night she sat under the motel lamp, rereading every page, unable to stop smiling. One evening, Alex was working late when Evelyn stayed behind to help organize. Tools. The shop was quiet, save for the occasional wind against the tin roof. She finally asked, "Why do you do this?" He shrugged. "Because someone once helped me when no one else would." She looked at him, trying to understand the weight behind those words. Then softly she said, "I've spent millions trying to fix Lila's legs, and all she needed was you." He looked up, eyes tired but kind. "No, she needed someone who believed she could do it herself." As fall rolled in, the town prepared for its harvest fair. Alex suggested entering Lila in the kids' obstacle course. Evelyn hesitated, but Lila begged. "Please, Mum, I can do it." With shaky faith and nervous energy, they agreed. The day of the fair arrived with bright skies and warm air. The mechanic brought a folding chair and toolbox, just in case. Lila wore her brace and a cap that read Grease Warrior. The small town crowd watched as she approached the first tire hop section. Her hands trembled. Alex gave her a thumbs up. Evelyn held her breath. The first few steps were slow but steady. Then Lila found her rhythm. She climbed over hay bales, maneuvered through turnies, and ducked under ropes. People began to cheer. By the time she crossed the finish line, the crowd erupted. No one cared who she was. They only saw strength. Evelyn was crying. Alex stood silently, hands in his pockets, watching the girl who once clung to crutches, now throwing her hands in the air like a champion. The mayor handed her a small trophy. "For courage," he said. Lila hugged it like it was gold. Reporters tried interviewing Evelyn, but she declined. "This isn't about me," she told them. "It's about what belief and Greece can do." Later that evening, she sat on the curb outside Alex's garage, watching Lila race a boy on scooters. She turned to Alex. "I don't want this to end," she said quietly. "It doesn't have to," he replied. Evelyn didn't know what he meant at first, but in the following days, that answer would become clear through every choice, every offer, and every moment that life unexpectedly changed. And just like that, a billionaire CEO who once lived in boardrooms found herself surrounded by toolboxes, stained overalls, and a different kind of brilliance. One that couldn't be measured by stock prices or degrees. She wasn't sure what the future held, but as she watched her daughter laugh under the sun, legs stronger than ever, she knew one thing: some miracles don't come with lab coats. Sometimes they come with wrenches and worn-out boots. Word spread across the town like a wildfire dancing on dry wheat. The local paper ran a headline that read, "From wrenches to miracles, mechanic helps little girl walk." Curious reporters came knocking on the garage doors, trying to squeeze a comment out of Alex, but he stayed humble. "I just helped her stand. She did the walking," he'd say, wiping oil off his hands. "Lila's progress, though, modest, captured hearts. She took small, unsteady steps across the shop floor, always toward Alex's smile or her mom's outstretched arms. The shop, once forgotten, had now become a place of silent marvels. Evelyn felt a shift inside her. The woman who once sat at sleek glass conference tables, who measured productivity in percentages and quarterly gains, was now learning to measure joy by the number of steps her daughter took each day. Her designer handbags gave way to a canvas tool pouch. She started arriving in jeans, hair tied back. "Just here to help," she'd say. Alex smiled at her efforts, half messy, half meticulous, but fully committed. She learned to align tires and change spark plugs. It was a transformation that even Evelyn hadn't anticipated, one that brought laughter to her lips again. The town's annual Fall Community Festival was just weeks away. The mayor had caught wind of the buzz around the garage and extended an invitation to honor Alex. "You've reminded us what real service looks like," the mayor had said. Alex almost turned it down. He didn't like crowds, but Evelyn, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, encouraged him. "This isn't just about you. It's about what you gave my daughter," she said softly. And so he agreed, never imagining how profoundly that evening would change his life. The gymnasium was packed wall to wall. Banners in maroon and gold fluttered from the ceiling. As Alex stood near the stage, flanked by a few grease-stained regulars from the shop, Evelyn stood off to the side with Lila. The girl wore a simple dress and shiny black shoes. She squeezed her mom's hand. "Do you think I can do it?" she whispered. Evelyn knelt down, her voice calm and full of wonder. "You already have, sweetheart. Just let them see." Lila took a breath and released her. Mother's hand then began walking slowly but alone toward the waiting microphone. The entire crowd hushed as if the air had been sucked out of the room. The 7-year-old's steps were deliberate. Her braces had been removed days before. Her gait was slightly unsure, but each step was full of purpose. Midway across the stage, she wobbled but caught herself. The silence broke into cheers. Some clapped, others cried, and Evelyn was among them. She didn't wait. She ran onto the stage and knelt beside her daughter, gathering her into an embrace. Then she turned toward Alex, tears streaming down her face. She ran to him. "You gave me back my daughter," she sobbed. Someone in the audience captured the moment with a camera, the mechanic, the CEO, and the girl walking between them. Just that single image exploded across social media within hours. Thousands shared it with captions like "Hope in Motion," "Mechanic of Miracles," and "Kindness restores legs and lives." But amidst all the noise, Alex stayed grounded. The very next morning, he was back in the shop, adjusting a carburetor. But Evelyn had bigger plans. She called a press conference and clarified, no, Hartford Biotech didn't invent this. This was built by human hands and stubborn heart, by someone who refused to give up. Then came the announcement that shocked the entire business world. Evelyn introduced Lila Steps, a non-profit division within Hartford Biotech aimed at developing affordable mobility aids for children with neuromuscular disabilities. She announced that Alex Ramirez would be co-founder and chief technical designer. "We're not selling hope, we're building it," she declared, "and we're starting right here in this garage where it all began." The journalists were stunned, shareholders were skeptical, but the public was not. Donations and letters of support poured in. Evelyn didn't care about the stock price anymore. She cared about what they were building. Alex was hesitant at first. "I'm just a mechanic," he reminded Evelyn, but she gently corrected him, her voice firm but full of respect. "You're a healer, Alex, with grease-stained hands and a heart most doctors would envy." Together they began converting a part of the garage into a workshop dedicated to the new designs. Engineers from Hartford Biotech would visit, but the soul of the project remained humble. Children from the town came in and tried prototypes, leaving behind doodles and thank you cards pinned to a growing wall of hope. Lila called it the Magic Corner. Months passed, and the town of Brookhaven began to change too. The local school offered space for physical therapy classes using Alex's devices. A local community college added a vocational course on adaptive mechanics. Even neighboring towns sent their families for consultations. Lila, now confidently walking, helped the other kids feel less afraid. She shared her story at schools and small events. "I wasn't broken. I just needed a different kind of help," she would say. And when asked who gave it to her, she always pointed proudly toward Alex, who'd be standing quietly in the back, wiping his hands. Evelyn and Alex, once strangers from opposite worlds, had become co-architects of something much bigger than either of them imagined. But it was more than business. Over quiet dinners and long days in the garage, they learned about each other's griefs and dreams. Evelyn spoke of losing her husband, a tech genius who died too young. Alex talked about the soldiers he couldn't save overseas. Their shared pain forged an unspoken bond, and in the spaces between mechanical fixes and shared coffee cups, something tender began to grow, something neither dared name, but both deeply felt. Lila, ever observant, noticed. One evening she said while tightening bolts beside Alex, "You know, you make Mum smile like Dad used to." Alex froze for a second, then he looked down at her. "That's a big thing to say." She nodded seriously. "That's because you're a big part of our life now." Evelyn, overhearing from the doorway, blinked back tears. She didn't speak, but her hand found Alex's shoulder as she passed, squeezing it gently. In that garage, surrounded by gears and memories, their family was being forged not by blood, but by purpose, hope, and shared healing. The shop displayed a new plaque beside the old workbench where it all began. Etched in brass, it read, "Here a child believed, and a mechanic refused to give up." Visitors stopped to take pictures, often standing in awe before it. School children came for field trips. People left flowers and thank-you notes. Some even brought their own children with disabilities, hoping to touch the same space where miracles were born. But to Alex, it wasn't magic. It was simply listening, trying, failing, trying again, and never giving up on someone just because others had. Evelyn no longer took meetings in skyscrapers alone. She often dialed in from the corner office Alex built for her in the shop. Her business suits were fewer now, her heels replaced with work boots. Her laughter, once rare and guarded, echoed freely through the walls. She became an active presence in the town, sponsoring school events, organizing car drives, and hosting workshops. At the local Christmas parade, she rode beside Alex on a refurbished motorcycle with Lila in a sidecar, waving to crowds, sharing candy, and wearing matching jackets that read, "Built with Heart." One cold January morning, a family from across the country arrived at the garage, a single mom and her wheelchair-bound son. She'd seen the viral photo months ago and held on to hope. "They said it wouldn't get better," she whispered, eyes full of tears. Alex knelt beside the boy, offering a warm smile. "Let's see what we can build together." Evelyn stood behind him, offering the mom her hand. "You're not alone." That was the moment they knew their mission wasn't just local. Lila's steps would expand. What began as one act of faith would become a national movement. The news outlets followed up. Garage of Hope. Biotech CEO joins forces with war vet mechanic. Love, legs, and second chances. But Alex still preferred the quiet. He fixed engines in the morning, worked on prototypes by noon, and always made time for Lila's check-ins after school. Evelyn would sit beside him late into the evenings, sharing stories, dreams, and plans. The line between colleague and companion blurred long ago. What they shared now was trust, the kind that couldn't be written into contracts or measured in market shares. Eventually, a new facility was built nearby, a mix of high-tech labs and classic garages. But Alex kept his original space open, refusing to let it become sterile. "This is where she walked," he'd tell visitors. And every year, on the anniversary of Lila's first independent steps, the town gathered at the garage. Children ran around, music, He played, and Evelyn would read the names of the kids helped that year, and Lila, she would climb up on the same bench she once sat on, now grown and strong, and say the words Alex once told her, "Want to help?" Because in that old Colorado garage, wrapped in steel and silence, a mechanic didn't just fix broken things. He restored something deeper: faith, family, and the belief that every step forward begins with someone who's willing to stand beside you.